This is One-on-One with Jasper Cole, Hollywood's bad guy, and so much more. Actor, talent manager, producer, and more. Now he's sitting down with today's top newsmakers from entertainment, politics, pop culture, and beyond. This is One-on-One with Jasper Cole.
Woohoo! All right. Howdy, 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 everyone. And welcome to One-on-One with Jasper Cole. This is your host, Jasper Cole, coming to you live from Sunset Gower Studios right here in Hollyweird, California. I want to give a big shout-out to my producer extraordinaire, Mr. John Williams.
Hey, Jasper. Good to hear from you. How you doing?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Good. You're on location, eh?
Well, it seems like, these days are flying by, and I see you one Wednesday, and then all of a sudden we're here again.
Yeah, I know. Well, hey, that's a quality problem in some ways, right?
Right, but it also means we're time is flying and we're getting old, and then you know what that means, and then it's over.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well, listen, everyone, I wanted to say welcome to the show, and please remember to follow us on Twitter at 101J Cole, and Facebook is 101 with Jasper Cole, and then you can go to my website, jaspercole.com, and there's also a link for the show on there. And we also have our YouTube channel, and about 2 or 3 days after this live broadcast, it goes up on YouTube. And, of course, we're on iTunes and Stitcher and Venus and Mars and wherever, JW. Where else are we?
You're right. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn as well. TuneIn is and YouTube, so. Oh,
right. And everyone, can people call in today, JW?
Yeah, sure. They can call in. 843-2826. So it's 323-843-2826.
Great, because I think I think today's topic is going to be of interest to everyone. We are so honored today. Our guest is coming up after the break. She calls herself, I love this, activist, actress
good.
and activist.
Yeah.
Donzaleigh Abernathy, and she's a veteran, accomplished actress and also a civil rights activist. Her father was the late Ralph Abernathy, who, along with Martin Luther King Jr., pretty much created the entire American civil rights movement. And they worked hand in hand through all of the passages of laws in the 60s. And, she is from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from Athens, Georgia. I lived in Atlanta for 2 years. So for me, there's so much I want to talk to her about as a fellow Georgian. And I grew up, obviously, around this whole, the Abernathy family and the Martin Luther King family. If you go to Atlanta, there are streets named after them, buildings. It's just an amazing tribute to both Ralph Abernathy and Martin Luther King Jr. And JW, in today's society, it just seems like the racial situation has gotten out of control, don't you think?
It sure has. It's like history is repeating itself.
Yeah, I really want to talk to Donzaleigh about, I've gotten a lot of good questions on Twitter and people on Facebook because they really want to get her opinions, obviously, on, where we are today. And in some ways, like you say, the movie Selma that was released last year, when you watch Selma in dealing with the shootings in Ferguson and the shootings in Charleston, and now apparently something happened just today in Cincinnati. News was breaking. I haven't found the actual story yet. And then we have Sandra Bland in Texas. It just seems like in many ways it's two steps forward and 40 steps backward.
Yeah, and especially now with technology and the fact that everyone has a cell phone camera, it makes everybody a reporter. So everybody is witnessing and reporting on social media what's going on.
Which is great in a way because you think about it. But what's disheartening is there are cases now, even with the Sandra Bland, even though the cops know the camera is there.
Yeah,
they still act a fool.
Yeah, that's what I don't get. But then again, look at the reality TV. I guess when you're used to having cameras being on, you still act yourself at times. I mean, in some cases, that's what's happening with some of these people on reality TV. They forget the cameras are there.
They just, But I noticed with the Sandra Bland situation, if you recall, a lot of the stuff happened. The cop knew to sort of take her off camera. Thank God there was a citizen standing by filming on his or her iPhone. Because a lot of the footage that we end up seeing to the right of the car came from this individual's phone, not from the camera on the dash cam.
Right.
You know, and so cops are learning, you know, sometimes, and they can turn these cameras on and off, so it's almost like, well, if they have that ability to do that, then how can we rely on them?
True.
Yeah. So this whole thing, you know, I feel like, and we'll talk with Donzaleigh about this as well, and I think we might be joined by our co-producer and publicist, Dominic Friesen. I may be joining in on the conversation, I hope. That would be great.
Yes, he is here.
Yeah, because it just seems in many ways, you know, since Obama was elected in, 2008, you know, there was this great hope when he was elected, first African-American president, and it just seems like it just brought the true crazies out of the woodwork.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe the most, you know, right-wing, the most crazies of all. But it just, I don't know, it almost seems like for a while, I guess we felt like racism was sort of, you know, we're making progress. And then all of a sudden after Obama was elected, it just seemed to throw it out there like it just shot out of a cannon. You know, the whole Tea Party was developed. And, you know, one thing I really want to talk to Donzaleigh about is, too, as a Southerner, I don't know, and this is not making a generalization of all Southerners, because clearly there's a large liberal and Democrat contingency in the South. But the general perception right now of the South is that it's just going backwards in so many different ways.
Yeah.
You know, Texas wants to secede from the Union. You know, Georgia, Alabama, so many of the southern states have just gone completely red. And you know, when I grew up there, my parents were liberal Democrats, and Georgia was more of a Democrat state. And I mean, even if you're not talking political parties, just in terms of tolerance and racism, you know, I've defended the South for so many years. When I moved out here, you know, rightfully so, saying, you know, not everybody in the South is a racist or a bigot.
Right.
These days, it's getting harder and harder for me to do that, because you turn on the news and you see these, you know, the whole Confederate flag situation.
Yeah.
You know, the flag's still flying in certain states.
Do you think it's a vocal minority, or do you think it's the majority that's speaking?
Well, the scary thing is, I want to believe it's a minority, but and again, I don't know if it's because we have more media focusing on stuff now.
Sensationalism. That's why I'm wondering. You know, I mean, when you it's like what came first, you know, the chicken or the egg. But I do believe, because of social media, and again, a lot of the trolls that troll around in the chat rooms and stuff. Of course, not in our chat room, but. People can hide behind their computer. Yes.
But my point is, I think they can show their true racism behind the computer.
No, that's true.
Because they're usually, no one knows exactly who they are.
Yeah, well, that's why YouTube was pushing for the real names, you know, just like Facebook requires your real name, and they're trying to enforce that you use your real name for accountability. It's very
It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
These are the kind of things I really want to get into talking with Miss Abernathy today. And like I said, I mean, people will know her as an actress. She was on the series Any Day now for 4 years. She's been in TV movies and miniseries. She was also a book author. She had a wonderful book called Partners to History: The Martin Luther King, Ralph David Abernathy and the Civil Rights Movement, published by Random House. She's pretty much done it all. I mean, she talked about someone who's acted and, you know, produced and written, and she's on the lecture circuit as we speak, always out there pushing the message of hope and healing and, you know, carrying on the message of her late great father and Martin Luther King Jr. So why don't we take our first break?
Okay. And
when we come back, we're going to be joined by the wonderful Donzaleigh Abernathy, and I think perhaps Dominic Friesen also.
Yes, we will.
Well, you are listening to One-on-One with Jasper Cole, and stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're back. One-on-One with Jasper Cole.
Welcome back. Thanks for tuning back in with us. This is Jasper Cole. We're coming to you live from Sunset Gower Studios right here in Hollywood, California. And we are so honored and proud to welcome to our show today actress and activist, Miss Donzaleigh Abernathy. Hello, my dear. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you doing, Jasper?
Well, it is a pleasure to meet you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's so exciting, actually.
Well, listen, as a fellow Georgian, I was born and raised in Athens, Georgia.
Okay, University of Georgia Territory.
Go Bulldogs! And I lived. I started my acting career in Atlanta at the Alliance Theater, and I lived there for 2 years before I moved out to Los Angeles. So, first of all, as a fellow actor, I'm really a big fan of your work. I think you've just done outstanding work throughout your career as an actress. Any Day Now is one of my all-time favorite series.
Thank you. You know, I began my career at the Alliance Theater as well.
Oh, my God, isn't it? And, it's still going strong, and it's just gotten bigger and better every year.
Oh, my God, I loved it. I never thought that I'd ever do television or movies. I just thought I was going to be this diva of the theater, oh, my God, I love it. The Alliance, that's an incredible theater. I did Antony and Cleopatra there. I did For Colored Girls Who've Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. And then I wrote a play for the Gay Men's Chorus about Billy Strayhorn. That was produced, well, actually they did that at the Philharmonic, which is right there at the same space.
Sure. Is that Partners to History?
No. It was about Billy Strayhorn, he wrote this, he was a gay composer.
It was called Lush Life, right?
Lush Life, right. And it was for the Gay Men's Chorus, and it was all, Billy Strayhorn wrote all of these great old songs. Wait, I used to visit all the very gay places, those come what may places.
Right.
That all those great guys used to sing way back in the day. And, so it was a play about him. But Partners to History is the book that I wrote.
That's your wonderful book. Okay, got it. Well, first of all, you've done so much, and you're truly a hyphenate. I mean, if anybody is, it's you. I totally love this activist that you use to describe yourself. I love that phrase because it combines the two things, your two great passions, together so well.
Well, it's in my DNA. It's not like I try to walk away from it, but I can't. I can't. And I think that when God puts you in certain circumstances, you've got to rise to the occasion, and I think that's what's happened to me. And I have to speak up for what I believe is right.
Absolutely. And, you were taught that as a child, clearly with the family history. And I have to say, I mentioned in my opening, growing up in Georgia, especially if you live in Atlanta, Ralph Abernathy and Martin Luther King, there's streets, there's buildings, there's monuments named after both men, and there's just such a rich history there of the civil rights movement, which it's such a dichotomy in many ways because J.W. and I spoke in the beginning about sort of the stereotype of the South, that it's, you have the good old boys, the racist, and you know what I mean? There's always been this sort of
they're there.
clout. And so when I first left and I came out to California, I was constantly defending the South because I would say to people, wait a second, Atlanta is this multicultural city. They have a huge gay population. Yeah. It's predominantly an African-American city government. And a lot of people just didn't get that. Ironically, and you can attest to this, how the entertainment industry now has just exploded there in the last 5 to 10 years as well.
Oh, my God, yeah. When I began, after I worked at the Alliance Theater, and they wouldn't cast me as Portia and Julius Caesar because they said Brutus was coming from New York and they needed a white actress. That's when I started working behind the camera. And at that point, there weren't any black women working behind the camera in Atlanta. I spent 7 years behind the camera, and it would just usually be about 3 black people. And now it's blossoming. It's incredibly diverse. And because they've changed the tax laws, production companies are coming to Georgia, and hopefully, because the new governor in Louisiana has changed the tax laws again, all those shows that would be going to New Orleans and Louisiana will probably be going to Georgia, which will boost our economy. Thank goodness.
Which would be great. Because you're right, Louisiana had it for a few years. They were sort of they got all the shows to start with, but now, as you know, because you work all the time. I mean, it's not just Tyler Perry. I mean, the CW's there, BET's there. There's
Movies
also
are there.
Wilmington North. Yeah, exactly.
Jennifer Garner's making a movie there right now. Lots of movies are happening. And like you said, you were saying Wilmington, North Carolina. There are lots of things that happen in North Carolina as well. So the South is rising again, but in a better way than it was before.
Oh,
Now,
exactly. I mean, I have I probably go on tape for more auditions for my Atlanta agent lately than I do for my Los Angeles agent because there's so much work happening. But, well, I wanted to talk about, it's interesting because I'm 51 and I started first grade in 1970, right when desegregation had began with the schools. And I tell this story of when I started first grade. There was the all-black high school, and there was the all-white high school, and then there was an elementary school in the middle. And I was starting at the school in the middle. And on my way to school, the first morning, I saw all these people marching with signs, and the cops were out there. And I just thought, oh wow, this is so exciting. Is this for me? But I mean, it was only as an adult looking back on that time of exactly what was happening. What was happening in my town, a lot of the Caucasian families were taking their kids and putting them into private schools.
right.
And my parents were very liberal Democrats, and they did not do that. And so, I started first grade, and I was probably one of 10 white kids in a predominantly all-black school. And thank God that's how my life went, because I didn't experience prejudice and racism from within my own family. I saw it around me, of course, but I remember at that time, there was pushbacks from both communities. As you recall, I mean, it wasn't like everybody, not everyone from the black community wanted desegregation, nor the Caucasian community. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, now what I want to say is, at that period, we did want integration, hands down. The black community wanted integration. You were blessed enough to not have to grow up under Jim Crow. But under Jim Crow segregation, I couldn't go to the public bathrooms. I could not drink from the water fountains. I was always, made to feel that I was a second-class citizen. I also know that there were signs in a neighborhood that was adjoining my mother's neighborhood that said whites only, which meant you couldn't even drive your vehicle through that neighborhood.
Wow.
Beaches were segregated. I could not go to the Savannah beach until I was much older. And when I finally went to the beach in Savannah and put my feet in the Atlantic Ocean, I was floored. I was outdone because I had been waiting all of this time to be able just to feel the ocean. And Southerners had a way of doing things, and they wanted to uphold this doctrine of segregation, Jim Crow, which was hurting society. Now, there were a lot of white people that were incredibly liberal. Our home was integrated. There was a white minister named Bud Walker who came and lived with us. And so when time came for us to integrate the elementary schools, and we integrated the elementary schools in the state of Georgia, I didn't understand, why we needed to do it. Why weren't the schools already integrated? If our home was integrated, why couldn't the schools be integrated? And I remember raising my hand when my mother asked the question, because we grew up in a very sort of traditional, strict environment. And my mother asked us very proper. She asked me what I wanted, and my hand went up first. And I said, I want to go, because I didn't want to be in the all-black school. And Yolanda King, Martin Luther King's oldest daughter, used to take acting lessons from this man named Mr. Walter Roberts, who was the father of Julia Roberts. And Eric Roberts. That's right. And they lived on Juniper Street. And on Saturdays,
oh my God,
after ballet, we used to go over there to Mr. Roberts' house, and I had a wicked crush on Eric Roberts. I did.
Well, who didn't, right?
Okay. He was so gorgeous, but Mr. Roberts was even more beautiful than any of his children have ever been. And he was just incredibly talented. And I loved him. And every time we put on our little plays, Mr. Roberts would come. And so I figured that if I would integrate this elementary school, I'd get to go to school with Eric, and I would see Eric, because they lived on Juniper right near Midtown Atlanta. So
sure, I
didn't know that they went over there to Morningside, but I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to see Eric every day instead of on Saturday. But it was incredibly different. And when I got to the elementary school, there were angry parents. There were police. There were photographers. They took pictures of us. And it was an entirely different environment. It was very stressful. I learned to speak up because my sister started to stutter through all of that because it was stressful. The boys
Stressful,
said, yeah,
sure.
they used to call her names. They used to call her Bosco Bear, and they were going to throw her down the steps. And I was little, but I knew that if they messed with my sister, I would take care of them.
That's right.
And
Earrings come off, yeah.
yeah, and then my brother Ralph was younger, and I was in the 3rd grade and he was in the 1st grade across the hall, and I'll never forget, I heard his teacher yelling and screaming, and I thought, wait a minute, she's yelling at my brother. That doesn't happen in our home, and
Right.
our home was nonviolent. So I remember saying to my teacher, "Excuse me, I'm about to leave class for a second." I guess she thought I was going to the bathroom, and at that point I went across the hall to my brother's classroom and addressed the teacher, and then went on upstairs to get my sister out of her class, and then to the principal's office and got my mom and my dad. And this was about, at that point, it was about, trying to make sure that a teacher treated us fairly. But during those days, those were incredibly trying times. And we needed integration. I'll never forget being able to go to the restaurants in downtown Atlanta, and Daddy and Uncle Martin and our 2 families on Sunday trying to integrate the restaurant at the airport, and then going to the Marriott and integrating those restaurants. And lots of black people were afraid. They did not want to follow us. And my mother was of the opinion that if we do this and if we push for this, the rest of the community will slowly follow. And they did. And I'll never forget, she integrated the opera, the Metropolitan Opera. Black people couldn't get season tickets and go to the opera to see simple cultural events. And so we used to go to all these cultural events, and we would be the only black people. We'd be the only little children seated there in the opera, but we were doing our part to change the world. And
Right.
and I'm glad we did. I know that it was hard. I know that it was hard, and it creates trauma that I still sort of suffer from.
Right,
But
sure.
the world's a better place today because of it. Even though we are in this precarious situation where we are today, we're still better off today than we were back then.
Well, right, and we got, when people knew you were coming on, I just got flooded with all kinds of questions, and that's exactly to the point you just made. People were asking, to ask Donzaleigh, does she feel, have we regressed in many ways in terms of racial issues? And I would say what you just said. No matter how it seems right now that we may have taken 2 steps back, it's still
Better.
huge progress from where we started.
Incredible. And when I started, I'm married to a man who's of a different race. And back then in the in the 60s, it was against the law.
Against the law.
It was against the law, and now it is not against the law. It's not against the law for me to live where I live, or to walk where I want to walk, or go into a McDonald's, or go into a Veggie Grill, or go into any restaurant, Real Food Daily, and order the food that I want to eat. Whereas way back in the day, we would only enter the back through the back door. I remember 1965, after they killed Viola Gregg-Lawson on Highway 80. We used to drive down Highway 80. This is where Selma, all of this happened, right outside of Selma. We used to drive down Highway 80 to go visit my grandmother and my father's family, and my mother's family and my father's family. And I'll never forget waking up, and my sister and I told my father we wanted to have a hamburger. And we just thought, well, my dad could pull over there to the side of the road to this little truck stop and get us a hamburger. Well, we didn't know. That there was incredible danger for my father to pull over on that side of that road. But he didn't want to fail us. So he pulled over on the side of the road. And then we watched him go around to the back door to order the hamburgers for us. Then he came back to the car, told us the truth about everything that had happened. And then I rode shotgun for the rest of the way, all the way back to Atlanta. And after that, I vowed I would never sleep in that automobile while my father was driving, because the threat of death was so great.
Huge back then, exactly.
Huge. So,
well, we were talking in the beginning about all the racial shootings, and the Sandra Bland and the Ferguson and the incidents in Charleston, and I don't know. I don't have the answers clearly. I just question everything, but when Obama was elected in 2008, of course, there was this wave of hope that things were going to get better. But it seems like to me that it just brought the crazies out of the woodwork.
Well, what it was, people were like, let's keep that White House white, not black. And what it did was it polarized America, because they were like, oh, my God, we have a black man here. Let's go backwards. Let's go backwards. And so it did bring all of the crazies out. It made people start to question race. And there was hope. And, we are so much better because Obama has been our president.
Absolutely.
I'll never forget being there at that inauguration and standing outside in that cold and then having a great seat and sitting there next to Alicia Keys and her mom with my brother. And it was a monumental time in our lives. My mother sat on the platform behind Presidents George Herbert Bush and Presidents Clinton. And it was phenomenal. However, it's the same thing. And a friend of mine called me yesterday, and she was working for the Pearl Buck Foundation in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And she said that Pearl Buck, who's a great writer who wrote The Good Earth, had come back from China and come to America and witnessed all of what was happening. And she was like, wait a minute. America has got a white problem. It's not black people that have the problem. It's white people who have the problem. They have the problem against black people. We're different. And our skin is brown, and people want to judge us because our skin is brown or because our hair is nappy. And invariably, they tell the group that's on the bottom economically or socially that at least, you better be better than that Negro. And so then you have poor whites fighting poor blacks, or poor Latinos fighting poor blacks. And we're all on the bottom of the barrel scraping for nickels and dimes and quarters, afraid to look up to see that all the dollar bills and all the successes up above us. And why are we fighting among each other? We need to rise up and go for the bigger things. So when Obama goes up and he goes for the bigger things, then people are like, oh, no, we've got to stop him, because if he goes there, that means more black people will be there, more Latinos or gays or women, and then it's fear, and that's exactly what it is. My dad used to say, we fear each other. We hate each other because we fear each other. We fear each other because we don't know each other. We don't know each other because we won't sit down at the table together. And what I really think is that, a lot of white people who are, invariably unreasonably afraid of black people, what it is they look and think, well, if I was in that circumstance, or if I was that person that was oppressed, wouldn't I retaliate? And so that's what they think. They think that we will retaliate. Well, black people are, we're loving people. We are not trying to retaliate, and neither have we ever really tried to retaliate. We don't pick up guns and machine guns and go into theaters and do mass murders.
No.
That's not who we are. We just want to be accepted for who we are, and want to just be able to sit in the room and sit at the table, or not be in the back of the theater, but sit in the front of the theater like everybody else and see better. Some of us need glasses, and so sitting in the back doesn't work for us, or just to be recognized, to be accepted. And so often, this friend of mine was telling me, she reminded me yesterday, she says, they don't even consider us. I'm in an all-white environment, Donzaleigh, and, people look around everybody else in the room, and they talk to everybody else in the room, and they ignore me. And I thought, oh, my God, Laura, I totally understand. I can go stand in the coffee shop on Beverly Drive with my husband, and invariably they will ask him and everybody else ahead of me what it is that they want, and I'll be standing right in front of my husband, and they won't ask me.
And we're talking 2015 in Los Angeles, so... I was going to ask you, when you first started to travel outside of the South, did you perhaps maybe went to New York? Did you start to see you were treated better at times when you left the South back earlier when you were younger?
Well, yeah. It was better. When I first left the South, the earliest that I remember, it was 1963, and that was went to the March on Washington. And then I saw a diverse crowd of people at the March on Washington, and it was people of all different colors, and they were, together. And so that was different. We were in a nice hotel. That was different. I remember we went to the New York World's Fair. That was different. We stayed at the Riverdale Motor Inn, but... Martin and Coretta and their kids stayed at the home of the Norton Jones family. And I'll never forget that night. Mike Nichols came to dinner with Elaine May. And, it was an integrated, gathering. And it was it reminded me of what had happened in my home. But I remember running around and being, feeling very comfortable. and then riding on the subway and seeing New York and seeing the World's Fair, and there not being that same level of discrimination. At that point, the Deep South, it was terrifying. I know that even today, I still have issues, and I think that's my issue. But I'm not trying to go to Mississippi, Arkansas. I was in Texas recently, and I found myself looking over my shoulder and questioning a lot because of a previous bad experience that I had had in Texas. And so when Sandra Bland had her experience in Texas, I wasn't surprised. But, the South is the South. And they have got to get over the Civil War. They still call it the War of Northern Aggression.
And this Confederate flag situation, it's always been so embarrassing to me in general. And Donzaleigh, forgive me because I don't know. Does the flag, is it taken down at the Georgia Capitol now, or is it?
No.
Is it okay?
No, I think it's
It's
up
there, right?
Well, I don't know that it's on the Capitol, but I know
But
that
it's
somewhere
around. I mean,
the Capitol grounds. I know that they took it down in South Carolina, but there are other states. I mean, the South still has to. I'll never forget. We were driving somewhere on some South Georgia highway, and I went into a convenience store, and I was standing there in line ahead of this man who was purchasing a Confederate flag and some Confederate memorabilia. And I said to him, "Excuse me, sir, why are you buying that? Did I do something to you? Is there a reason you all don't like me?" The man was mortified. But I take it personally. It's an affront because that flag stands for the Confederacy, which stands for slavery. And the other day I received an email from Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy, from his great-grandson, who wants to do something with me and the great-granddaughter of Dred Scott, who was considered to be 3/5 of a human being way back then, and the Dred Scott decision. And I was like, oh, my God, this is Jefferson Davis's great-grandson? Oh, I don't know about this. I just don't know. And that was my initial response. I know that I have to, on behalf of my people, and because I am a part of the black race, and so I feel like they're my people, and I feel like I carry them. But I have to engage with them and with this and see what it is that they want to do. Peggy Wallace, George Wallace's daughter, asked me to speak with her on an event, and I had spoken after Peggy. So and when I arrived into the South, I hadn't heard what Peggy had to say. So we got on stage, and Peggy was speaking. And I thought, oh, that's great. That's Peggy. That's George Wallace's daughter. Stay away, Donzaleigh. Anyway, a few months later, we found ourselves in Oakland, California. And I spoke first. And at the close of at the end of the engagement, Peggy spoke. And Lucy Baines Johnson spoke, as well as Carrie Kennedy, Robert Kennedy's daughter. And Lucy's the daughter of President Lyndon Baines Johnson. But when Peggy spoke, I broke down into sobbing tears. She asked for forgiveness. Peggy said to me, to me, not only to me, but to the audience, she said, "My father did not fire a gun or kill one person, but he did create the climate that murdered several people."
Wow.
He said in his inaugural address, "Segregation now, segregation today, segregation forever." And he did stand in the schoolhouse door and try to stop Vivian Malone from integrating the University of Alabama. And so I was like, oh my goodness. And I found myself sobbing uncontrollably. And there are all these people that want to take your hand, and all of a sudden it's like all the trauma that I had experienced as a little girl came rushing back, and there it was on my face and in my body. And then Peggy asked me again, would I go with her to, my agent called and asked me would I go to Missouri and speak. This was right after Ferguson.
Okay.
And speak with Peggy at an event. And I was so not sure that I wanted to do this. And then there again, I said, I have to because I'm my father and my mother's daughter. And then when I got there, it was just phenomenal. And Peggy was just incredibly humble and so great and so... It blew my mind, and I knew that he was turning over in his grave, George Corley Wallace. But her mother, she spoke about her mother, Lurleen Wallace, and how when her father stood at that door, how upset her mother was. And her mother took her to the country away from the governor's mansion to her home. And they sat outside in the swing where the mother cried. And I thought, oh, my goodness, now we're finding out about a family that was divided based on her father's beliefs, and that her father had never expressed to her why he felt that way. But she had taken her son to an exhibit, a civil rights exhibit, and he said to his mother, "Mother, why did Papa do that? Why did Papa stand against black people?" And Peggy decided she was going to write a whole new chapter for her family, and she has. And then very recently in March, when we were for the 50th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March and the Right to Vote in Montgomery, with President and in Selma with President Obama. Peggy apologized to John Lewis and to the black members of Congress and the Senate in front of a host of Republicans who had attended the event as well. And I saw a change arising in America, and it's slow, but it is actually happening.
Well, she's an example of, racism is generally not born. I mean, you're taught. Babies are born pure and innocent, and she's an example, Peggy, of growing up in a situation of not, being taught racism and hatred by her. And kids pick up on everything. So whether the dad actually sat her down and said anything or not, she knew what was going on subliminally.
Right, and I think her mother was the one who taught her otherwise. But the thing, I think, when you see someone like Peggy, you see the power of love and nonviolence. At work.
And forgiveness.
And forgiveness. Because I'll never forget, my dad told me that George Wallace had called and wanted to have an audience with him. And I said to my dad, "Oh, no, you're not going to see George Wallace. You are not." He said, "Donzaleigh, I am going to see George Wallace, and I want to hear what he has to say." Wow. So my dad went down, and he said that George Wallace apologized and asked for forgiveness. And at the very end of his life, those were black people that were around him. There was a black man who was taking care of him. And the same thing would happen to George Wallace, Lester Maddox, who had been the governor of Georgia with the axe handle, who wouldn't let black people into his restaurant. He came down with cancer, and apparently at the end of his life, he surrounded himself in a black community where black people were taking care of him. And Strom Thurmond, look at him.
Look at him.
Strom Thurmond. We soon discovered that he has a
biracial.
But the reason he had a biracial child was because he loved a black woman.
Right.
He loved a black woman, and so he was an avid racist or KKK guy trying to hide because he didn't want people to know who he truly was. To
know the true person. Now, the time is flying. I can't believe this, but I want to get to the Museum of Social Justice because
that's what
I
I'm
know
doing
that's
now.
Coming up on October 17th, correct?
The Museum of Social, and that's what I'm a part of now, which is there's this huge civil rights exhibit that's going to open October 17th at the Museum of Social Justice, which is right downtown in Los Angeles. And there's this plaza, and it's the Los Angeles United Methodist Church. And there, it's great because it's going to be all of these Hollywood photographs. I brought all the photographs, so many of them, for you to see, but you can't see them.
Well, I will see them. I will make it. Well, I'm going to go to this museum for sure.
Yeah, you really and truly have to. And this exhibit's going to be incredible. And I wanted to. I'm going to be the keynote speaker on the 17th when the opening happens. The exhibit's going to run for a year.
Till September, right, of 2000, it's September.
Right.
Of 2016.
2016, that's correct. But I hope that it will serve as a catalyst to bring together black people and Latino people. Because this church has traditionally been a Latino church. It was founded by the Latino community. And downtown right there is a plaque. And it talks about the people that founded the city of Los Angeles in 1781. And of the 44 people that founded Los Angeles, they were divided between African descent and Mexican descent. There wasn't one white person. So, Mexicans, Latino people, and black people founded the city of Los Angeles, where we are today. And there's a plaque downtown, and it talks about it identifies the race of the people, the names of the people. And it's something that united us. And so now it's time to unite us. And that's what I hope this exhibit will do and, help to facilitate change in our community. Also, it celebrates the work of the movie stars. I'm looking at this photograph right now. I'm looking at handsome Marlon Brando and Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward and Tony Franciosa and Polly Bergen and all of these movie stars that participated in the civil rights movement. And this was before the March on Washington. And so their pictures are going to all appear in this exhibit. And Sammy Davis Jr., it's just incredible. And then I get a chance to see all these great pictures of my dad.
Oh, my God. I cannot wait. Well, listen, Donzaleigh, the time has flown by. Is there a website people can keep up with you, or do you have a Facebook or Twitter, or is there?
I have a Facebook account. I don't have a Twitter account. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around Twitter. But listen, I need about 3 hours with you because you are so amazing and profound, and I can't tell you enough how much I'm honored that you came on the show today. And thank you for everything you've done and you continue to do. Listen, tell the people to go to the museumofsocialjustice.org to purchase their tickets, or if they want to sponsor this exhibit, because we need sponsorship for this exhibit, because we're poor people trying to put this thing on here, but we need their funds and we need their service. So it's
support and money.
Right.
Yes. museumofsocialjustice.org. And we'll have it up on the website, and JW will put it up on the screen, because this will go up on YouTube in a few days as well.
Oh,
so,
really?
Well, the time flies, my dear. Thank you again so much. What an honor to have you on the show. Much continued success in everything, and I'm so glad to have met you. So thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. That's another great show. Thanks, JW. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back next Wednesday, same time, same place. Couldn't do it without you. You've been listening to One-on-One with Jasper Cole. Take care.
Thanks for checking out One-on-One with Jasper Cole. Check out past episodes and get the latest as they're released. Subscribe today on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube.